name is Claire. This is my channel, Claire's Footsteps, and today I am coming to you from Algiers, the capital of Algeria. Now, Algeria is not really the kind of place that many solo females come to. In fact, it's not really a very touristy destination at all. I am so excited about this Algeria trip. I only got here a couple of days ago and I'm going on a tour from Sunday, going around some of the highlights of the country, and I'm really excited about it. I've wanted to come to Algeria for ages and I've heard it's there's so much here like to see, so many Roman ruins, there's the Sahara Desert, there's the Mediterranean coastline, and it's relatively unvisited by tourists because they have quite a strict visa process to get in. But I'm here, which I'm very excited about. And at the moment, I'm actually here on my own. So my partner is flying in and meeting me tomorrow. He's had a work trip this week, and I really wanted to get the boat from Marseille to Algiers. I'm big on overland travel. This kind of, it's my favourite way to travel. I did do a whole video about the boat. That was my last video, so do check that out if you haven't already. But the boat only ran once a week, so I had to come a few days earlier than my partner, which has meant I've had this time here on my own. I'm going to vlog the rest of the time on my own. I've got like another day and a half, so I'm going to start that vlog after this one. But I thought I'd record a quick video before, because I wanted to share some of my solo travel safety tips. So I'm no stranger to solo travel. I've travelled to 66 countries now. Algeria is my 66th, and I'd say probably about 50 of those I've done solo. I do travel a lot with my partner nowadays, but before we met I used to travel everywhere solo, and I've travelled in places like Central Asia, China, Mexico, Guatemala, done all of those solo, loads of Europe, Australia. So I do know quite a lot about being safe as a solo female traveller. You can also watch this video if you're a guy. Some of these tips also are applicable to male travellers, they're applicable to all solo travellers. So I've put together this list of kind of the rules that I always go by when I travel somewhere on my own. And with these sort of rules, mantras, whatever you want to call them, I've always found that I've had a safe time. Touch wood. I've never encountered any serious problems while travelling, and I've travelled to, a fair few places. So I'm gonna go through these sort of rules, mantras in this video, and I hope they'll be helpful. And while I've adopted all of these for these few days I've got on my own in Algeria, you can adopt them anywhere in the world. Like, they're very general, and wherever you're going as a solo traveller, you can use these to help you stay safe. Just want to have one caveat, this isn't like a guarantee. Obviously things can change, things happen in different places in the world, but I am sure if you follow these rules, these things that I always stick to, that you have much more of a chance of being safe than if you did the opposite. So let's dive in to my ways of staying safe as a solo traveller. I've written some notes on my phone. So I have separated these rules into 5 sections, and then they all have different subsections. So the 5 sections are blend, prepare, contact, learn, and common sense. So let's dive into blend. So what does blend mean? Basically, try to blend in as much as possible, or try to not look like a tourist. So I'm in Algeria. You can probably see I'm wearing long sleeves and I'm wearing a long dress that goes all the way down to my feet. Now, Algeria is a Muslim majority country and most locals are quite covered up. But wherever you are in the world, I would generally recommend dressing on the side of more conservative than less, because you're less likely to attract attention if you do that. So if you do want to blend in and not look so much like a tourist, I'd recommend just wearing a bit more layers, covering up a bit more in a lot of countries. Obviously it's a case-by-case basis across the world. Like I mentioned, a lot of women don't cover their hair in Algeria, and it's definitely not a necessity, and actually everywhere I've been in North Africa has been the same. However, I do have a couple of headscarves with me. I will probably need them at some point in my trip if I go into a mosque, because obviously you have to cover your hair there. And Actually, I was thinking of wearing one when I was walking around on my own, just because it will make me look even less like a tourist. For men, the dress code is a little bit different, but actually I would recommend, if you're a man and you're traveling somewhere where all of the local men are wearing trousers, then wear trousers as well. Again, it will help you blend in. So how else can you blend? One is definitely learning a little of the local language. Now, while you might not learn enough of a language of somewhere you're going to be fluent or even be able to have a conversation, it never ever hurts to learn how to say hello and thank you. I try and do that for every single country I visit. And this is because it's respectful. It helps. Like, it shows that you've made a little bit of effort to understand some of their language, and it shows that you're interested in their culture and their country. And I've always found, if I say hello in someone's native language rather than saying hello in English, like, I'm sure they understand hello in English, but by saying hello in their native language, even if I then have to revert to English, people are much more interested in having a conversation with me, and I think would be more inclined to help me if I needed any help. So I think it shows respect, and it does help you blend in that little bit more, even if you're not actually having a conversation in the language. But obviously, by all means, if you can learn the language enough to have a conversation in, that's even better. Like, I have found it a lot easier traveling around Mexico because I speak Spanish, and I found it a lot easier to chat to locals, get to know where to go, where not to go. Found it a lot easier if any issues arise. So learning a language as much as possible only has benefits. And actually, even in Algeria, so in Algeria they speak, well, two languages, Arabic and French, and actually a lot of people in their 20s and 30s do speak English as well. But I have actually found, I've had a few conversations in French since I've been here. My French isn't great. I can sometimes have a bit of a conversation, but it's quite elementary. Although I say elementary, I did study it for AS level, but I haven't spoken it since then. But even just knowing that little bit of French has helped me. Like, I had a nice conversation with a lady who was on the ferry, and it was just good to get that contact. And I knew that if something happened, I had someone I knew there who I'd spoke to and had managed to have a little bit of a conversation to. So it really does help, even if it's basic. The next way to blend is to just learn a little bit about the culture. So it's similar to learning the language, just learn a little bit about how the country works, things about its culture, what makes it tick, etc. For example, if you learn a little bit about the food and learn some of the dishes that the country is most famous for, and then if you do get chatting to a local, you can mention, oh yeah, I've heard about this food, I heard it's really tasty. Just that little bit of interest in their country, it just helps you blend in a little bit more. And also, I mean, you learn lots of cool stuff about the country, and that's why you travel, isn't it? So it's a win-win. My last subtopic for this blend section is to find local connections. So you can do this before you get into the country or after, but I would recommend trying to find someone local, someone trustworthy, who you can speak to if you need anything, or who can give you any advice or any tips. So good ways to do this are, I mean, if you know anyone who's from the country, you have any friends of friends, but if you haven't got anything like that, what I would recommend doing is booking a tour or some sort of activity for your first day. Make sure it's with an English speaking guide, and then probably 90% of the time I've been on these tours, the guides have always said, or if I've asked them, they've always been like, yeah, fine, take my WhatsApp number. If you need anything, if you have any questions, let me know. And that's great because you have already given them your business. So it's not like it's not like you're just asking them for a favour. But most of the time, tour guides want people to feel welcome in their country. So they are very likely to, be happy to offer you any tips or advice. I can speak from a personal perspective as well, because I actually do run walking tours around the town that I live in. And I always say to people at the end of the tour, you've got my email. If you have any questions, let me know. As tour guides, we want people to feel welcome. So that is a great way to make a local connection if you don't know anyone in the country. So my next broad section of this is contact. So what does contact mean? It just means be contactable, basically. So the first step for this is to get a local SIM card. So local SIM cards basically means you change the SIM card in your phone and you're able to use data, and basically when you're walking around you'll always be connected to the internet. I know this isn't what we had back in the day. I know back, before smartphones and, well, even mobile phones, to be honest, were a thing. People would travel around without having this contact. But it does help people to stay safe. And I think especially it does help solo female travelers to stay safe. Just because if anything happens, you can contact someone, whether that be someone in the country or someone at home. Consider a tracking app on your phone. Some people don't like the idea of this, but I actually have a tracking app installed on my phone and my whole family can see where I am all the time. And to be honest, I don't have any issue with it because I don't really, it's good they know where I am. And it helps them be a bit more reassured when I'm away that I am safe. They can see where I am, and if anything was to happen, then they would at least have an idea of where I've been. So do consider that. I think it's free, the one I use. I think it's Life 360. Yeah, Life 360. It used to be Find My Friends, but it changed. And yeah, it works quite well. I also use it at home, to be honest. If I'm going to give one of my family members a call, I check to see if they're home first, which saves me a bit of time. All right, and the next subsection, kind of similar, is to just speak to people at home. This doesn't necessarily maybe make you safer in the country, but it can help alleviate people worrying about you. So I always try and send my parents a message every day just to tell them what I've been up to, maybe send them some photos and just tell them I'm all right. And yeah, I think that is helpful for everyone, really. And I did mention this earlier, but where I say, get a local contact, ask them questions. Ask them, is this area safe? Is that area safe? Any recommendations on where to eat? Any recommendations on things to do? And like I say, people are generally very happy to help. A, because they want you to have a good time in their country or city. B, if you ask them for recommendations, they might recommend places that people they know run. And C, if you're using their services as a guide, then it's a business transaction. So just don't be afraid to ask the questions and get a real good picture of it. The next broad section is prepare. So if you're going somewhere as a solo traveller, especially as a solo female traveller, I think it's really important to fully prepare. So what does that mean? Well, initially, choose your hotel. So choose your hotel based on safety. I would always recommend doing this. So I'm currently staying in a 4-star hotel in Algiers. I'm not staying right in the old city, which is kind of where most of the attractions are. And this is because I will be going there when I do my group tour. So I'll be going there and seeing all of that then. My main priority for these few days was to have somewhere comfortable where I could adjust to Algeria and get some work done. So I chose this hotel based on its booking.com ratings. I went onto lots of hotels that were sort of the kind of hotel I wanted, and I searched for safe or safety in the reviews. I think this one had about 4 or 5 reviews saying safe area, felt safe, safety, etc. So that really motivated me to book this one. This hotel was also in the area where all the embassies are, which generally is quite a safe area, so that's another good tip. And it's also a larger hotel with a restaurant and breakfast and security outside. So I do feel very safe here. And I would recommend just bearing all of those things in mind. If you are a solo female traveller and you're going somewhere, it's difficult to say because I do think Algiers does feel very safe to me. But if you're going somewhere where you are a little bit concerned about the safety, I would recommend spending the extra money to make sure you have somewhere safe. I would recommend prioritising spending your money on a safe accommodation. I'm going to go a bit more into something an experience I had at an accommodation where I felt less safe in a moment, but that's the general mantra that I follow at least. So once you have your hotel booked or your hotel planned, look at the Google Maps of the whole area. So I looked at a Google map for the whole of Algiers, and I just looked at, okay, how far is the hotel from the port where I'm getting in? How far, like what restaurants are there in the area? There's actually loads of restaurants around here, which is quite good. How far is it from any attractions I want to go to? How would I get to those attractions? Would I walk? Is there a taxi app? Etc, etc. So just get really acquainted with the Google Maps of the area before you go. You can even go onto Google Street View and like have a little walk around the streets. So I would recommend doing all of that just to get acquainted, just to get familiar. Then book a transfer. So when you first arrive into a city, unless it's somewhere, if it's somewhere that's known for having very good public transport, then you should be fine. But if it's somewhere where you're not sure what the transport's like from the airport, book a transfer. No, most of the time you can find these transfers on, a lot of the time you can find them on Get Your Guide. To go on to Get Your Guide, you can click on the link in the description. It's an affiliate link. If you found this video useful, I'd really appreciate it if you booked any tours or transfers through that link, because I make a small commission at no extra cost to you. But if you don't want to do that, you can just type in getyourguide.com or .co.uk or whatever into the search bar and you'll find Get Your Guide. So you can book a lot of transfers through Get Your Guide. You can also book them, I mean, you can just type into Google transfers where you're going and look at the TripAdvisor reviews, check they're legit. Or you can contact tour operators in the country and ask them if they offer a transfer service. So, for example, when I arrived into Algeria, I arrived into the port and I arrived 4 days before my tour starts. So they do actually offer a complimentary airport transfer for this tour, but I arrived too early and into the wrong place to make use of this complimentary airport transfer. But what I did was I sent the organisers an email and I said, if am I able to book a transfer from the port, pay for it obviously, but I'd like to have someone there, you know, with a sign with my name on, as I'm first arriving into the country. Because when you first arrive somewhere, you're kind of at your most vulnerable. It's completely overwhelming. You're in a new country. There's, you know, everything's going on, especially if you've never been there before, and you have all your stuff on you. That's the thing. You have all of your valuables on you. You have, you know, if you have cash out, you have all of that. You have your electronics. So it really is when you're at your most vulnerable. And I've had a couple of situations, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, where I've ended up making the wrong decision when I got into a country, and I was okay, but it could have been a potentially dangerous situation. So book your transfer, make sure they're trusted, and make sure they're waiting there with a sign with your name on, or make sure that they know your name before you get into their car. Yeah, this leads me on nicely to my learn section. So my next sort of broad section to stay safe when solo traveling is learn. So this isn't going to work when you're on your first ever solo travel trip, but when you're on your second, third, fourth, think about anything that you learned from your previous ones and how you can adapt to make yourself even safer this time. So 2 of the tips I've already given are tips that I've derived from things I've learned from other trips. So when I say book your transfer and make sure they know your name, I won't go into this in too much detail, but on my first ever backpacking trip, I was with a friend. We landed in Cancun and we were very overwhelmed. We'd been traveling for about 18 hours at this point, and we sort of walked through and everyone was asking us if we wanted a transfer, and at some point we mentioned our hostel name. I'm not sure how, but at some point we mentioned our hostel name, and then some other guy came up to us and he said, "Oh, you're this hostel? Yes, I'm your driver." He wasn't our driver, and he took us completely the opposite way to the hostel. I ended up ringing the hostel, cost a fortune in mobile data, but we were like, where are we going? I rang the hostel and he realised I was talking to the hostel, and then he spoke to them and then he took us in the right place. But he wasn't our driver. And he wouldn't have known our names if I asked him. So make sure you have some kind of confirmation, whether that's a sign with your name on, whether they can tell you your full name, or whether they can show you an email or anything that confirms they're booked. If you're unsure, then try and contact whoever booked and just say, you know, is this the person? After I experienced that, I've never had that again, and I've, you know, landed in hundreds of airports over the years. It was just unlucky that happened on our very first backpacking trip, but it has taught me to be very careful with booked transfers now, especially when I first arrive into a place. So the second story that I'm going to tell happened a lot more recently. It happened in April this year, and we were staying in Cairo, in Giza, in a guest house, and I just didn't feel very safe there. There was a guy there who kept asking me quite inappropriate questions. Whenever my partner was like we were up on the rooftop and my partner went back down to the room to get something, and he immediately came over to me and started asking me questions about like whether me and my partner were together, and etc, and quite like invasive questions. Whenever I asked him for anything, like we didn't have any loo roll in our room, and I went down and asked for some loo roll, and he acted like I'd asked him for £1 million. And yeah, it was just a lot of things. I just didn't feel comfortable at all. So when I was booking this trip, I was like, I'm not gonna, I love staying in guest houses. I love staying in small guest houses, but I was like, safety is my priority. I'm going to book a big hotel, and that's what I've done, and I do feel very safe here, and the hotel staff here are all exemplary. They're all extremely helpful, very, very nice, very respectful, so that is great. I don't like to tar all like small guest houses with the same brush. Like obviously 99% of the time people are lovely, but unfortunately you do get the 1% who can make you feel uncomfortable. And if it was one person working in this hotel who was making me feel uncomfortable, it would be filtered down a lot more than at that guest house where this one guy was kind of the only person who worked there. So yeah, just be mindful of that. And like I say, I've learned from these experiences, and now I bared all of this in mind when I was planning this trip. Another way to learn is to, again, speak to people. Like I say, speak to a tour guide if you have a tour guide. I know I sound like a one-track record, but it is really one of the best ways to stay safe. And also speak to your hotel staff. So if your hotel staff are, like the hotel staff here, like I say, they've all been great. I feel like, I could definitely go down and ask them for some recommendations, some tips. And I'm sure I could go down and ask them, I just want to know, am I safe walking around? Am I safe doing this? If I asked them, I'm sure they'd help me. So as long as you get a good vibe from them, definitely you can speak to your hotel staff. At the end of the day, they're there to make sure you have a good time in the hotel. They want you to have a good, they want you to leave a good review. They want you to recommend the hotel. So definitely recommend speaking to hotel staff. My last broad category is common sense. So if you use common sense, you can stay quite safe in quite a lot of places. So what are common sense things? General rules to abide by pretty much wherever you are in the world. Don't walk around at night. I went for a walk here in the late afternoon. Like I said, I don't know if it's safe around here at night. I haven't asked. If I did have to go out at night, then I would ask. But in the day, feels very safe. And yeah, generally, I wouldn't walk around at night in a lot of places. Even a lot of places in London, I wouldn't walk around at night. So it's just general common sense. Obviously, it's a shame that we do have to think about that, because we should feel safe to walk around anytime, but unfortunately that is the way the world is. Another one is to use discretion when speaking to people. So speak to people, don't get me wrong, do speak to people. That's part of the best part of traveling. But if you're walking around on your own in a place you don't know, especially if you're a woman and a man sort of comes up to you and starts talking to you, you maybe want to give that a rain check. You maybe want to just walk off and, don't really engage. If it's a random, my general rule is if I'm walking somewhere and someone random comes and starts talking to me, I generally won't engage in a conversation. If I'm in a restaurant and I get chatting to the waiter, or if I'm buying coffee and I get chatting to, if I'm somewhere positioned and I get chatting to someone, then that's a kind of a normal place to strike up a conversation. But generally, if I'm in my hometown and I see people just walking around, I don't normally just approach them and start talking to them. So that's my general rule. And also, if you're in somewhere like a restaurant or a cafe, hopefully that's a safe space. So hopefully, if you do get chatting to someone, even if they turn out to be, not someone you want to be chatting to, hopefully you're in a safe space. I am running out of battery, but I think I've covered pretty much everything. So I follow all of these steps wherever I go, and I think that it really does help me stay safe. I feel quite confident solo traveling in most places in the world, and like I said, I've travelled to a lot of places on my own, and yeah, it's common sense, blending, what my other ones learn, contact and prepare. And with all of those tips, I think you can really have like enjoyable, successful time there. Oh, bonjour! Okay, the cleaners just came in, so it gave me a chance to use my excellent French skills. They're not, well, they're a work in progress, I'll say. But I just wanted to finish off with my last tip, which was, if you're travelling solo to places where people don't often travel solo, I would recommend just having a bit more of an emergency fund, or just a bit more money to go with. Like I say, the hotel that I'm staying in now, it wasn't too expensive, but it was a bit more than the most budget place that I could have stayed at. And also things like, if you get a guide, if you're traveling solo, will cost a bit more. If you want a transfer from the airport, it will cost a bit more. So if you're going places like Thailand, you know, Southeast Asia, Australia, even Central America, you probably won't need to budget as much for this kind of thing, because you will meet people a lot, and it's quite normal to be on all the transfers and stuff as a solo traveller there. But if you're going somewhere which is less touristy and definitely less visited by solo female travellers or solo travellers in general, do have a bit more of a budget for things like this. Anyway, I better go now as the cleaners need to come in and clean my room. But thank you so much for watching. I need to charge my battery, and then I'm going to start my vlog of my day and a half solo in Algiers. So do watch that if you're interested in a more kind of solo travel life and what I get up to when I'm solo traveling. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!